What's up, everybody? We get so many questions about conspiracy theories on cases that we're following on this channel, about what ifs. And someone said, Pete Sardis and I have known each other for over 20 years, and we usually see eye to eye, but there are some things we see very differently. I'm going to follow the case. Pete's going to bring in the theories. What is mainstream media saying? What are the reports saying? Is it real? Is it fake? Did it come in at trial? And we're going to discuss it because, as we've seen in trials, one side or the other can do something that makes previously inadmissible evidence come in by opening the door. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, wherever you listen to our podcast. Let me know what you think in the comments. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Opening the Door, our brand new podcast series where we are going to talk about stuff that we don't talk about as much on the YouTube channel because we try to stick to the facts. We stick to trial breakdowns, case breakdowns, reading the actual docket, reading the actual evidence and documents that are going to come in a case. But on this show, so many of you guys ask us, well, what about this person who said this, or the hairdresser, or the worker who said she had a certain night with Alex Murdaugh, which is who we're going to talk about in today's episode. These are going to be the shows where we answer those questions. And to help me do that is my partner, Pete Sardis. We've been working together for over 10 years. We've known each other for much longer than that. Both learned how to be lawyers from my dad. So we have similar ways of looking at these cases and talking about these things. Sometimes we disagree, which will make it fun for the podcast, but we are going to dive into subjects that we don't often talk about to see whether or not they're admissible or if there is any way they could possibly come into the case. And this case that we've been following for quite some time, the Alex Murdaugh and the entire Murdaugh family saga, has no shortage of media reports, headlines, speculative theories, conspiracy theories. And today we're going to talk about a few of them as Pete has dug in to what the media is talking about, where we're at in these cases. He followed the case in the trial a little bit, didn't watch the entire thing like I did. So I'll be able to tell him like this did come in, this didn't, and why. But it's going to be a fun discussion. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. And let me know if you have any questions or what cases you think would be good for this podcast in the comments section below. So Pete, where are we going to start?
Okay, this is a soap opera to me, this case. You look at a guy that's a, third generation lawyer, something like that. His great granddaddy represented literally every personal injury case in the state for however many years. So here is a guy that is charged with convicted now of killing his wife and his son. But I looked back and I find out apparently there was a girl that died in a boating accident. That kind of got, put under the rug, right? And then apparently his son was involved in some case where another young man died. I understand they just exhumed this guy's body. So what is going on here? Is this just like Southern, good old boy justice? Is that what's going on in this town?
So they don't just have all the personal injury cases. It goes much further than that. His grandfather was I'll say state attorney, so you can understand the language here, the verbiage. It's the solicitor there, but he is the state attorney, and they have been in control basically of the solicitor's office, the Murdaugh family name. I can't remember if it was his great-grandfather or his grandfather. I guess that would be his grandfather, but I don't even know. It's either 2 or 3 generations before him. And for the last 100 years, they have been in charge of the solicitor's office. So when the solicitor's office was investigating this crime, they ended up getting bounced. That's why the AG's office came in. So yes, we have the murder of his wife and son. We have the BUI, the boating accident case where children died. Okay. We have the Stephen Smith death case. That's the one that's being investigated right now where they exhumed his body. Again, Buster Murdaugh, the living son, has not been an official listed as an official suspect at this point, but they are doing an additional autopsy, a private autopsy. And from what I've heard just from media reports, his body is still in a good enough condition to where they're able to do what they need to do. But then we have the fact that he's stealing and stole millions of dollars from his clients over the last 10 or 15 years, from clients that died in car accidents, that were paralyzed, that were dying in class action lawsuits, getting cancer from something. I mean, you know it. The clients that we deal with every day that need that money, that we go and prove to a judge or a jury, they need this money because of what they're going through. He literally turned around and took that money and stole that money.
And you think about it from a perspective of, just being a normal human being. Bad things happen to people. I get that. We see it all the time. But what are the chances that this many bad things have surrounded this family and no one's done anything about it? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, does Murdaugh actually have a badge?
Yes.
Okay, so when
hold
there
on.
was a voting act, okay.
He doesn't just have a badge. So first off, I didn't even get to the last thing. Then he has a fake suicide attempt where he pays his drug dealer to shoot him on the side of the road to get the insurance policy for his son, which he's a lawyer and he didn't even know the suicide exclusion was gone after like 2 years. So it's a never ending story. But not only did he have a badge, okay, because we know people that have badges, but he was a private citizen who also had blue lights installed in his personal vehicle. His law firm paid for vehicle had police lights installed by the same guy that installs law enforcement lights.
So let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. So in the case involving, what's the young man's name that they exhumed?
Stephen Smith. Stephen Smith.
Okay.
Sam Smith, I think, was the singer.
And then there's the young lady that was involved in the boating accident. So he, meaning Murdaugh's family, the guy has a badge and lights on his vehicle. His solicitor's office, state attorney's office, is doing the investigations, probably with the local county coroner, which I'm picturing in my mind is his drinking buddy, and the sheriff who he goes fishing with every weekend and goes up to the hunting lodge. So what you're telling me is the only people that have ever investigated any crime involving this family is this family.
Before the AG's office got involved, basically. And it goes further. There was some testimony from one of his son's friends who was a runner at his law firm that every once in a while, another local lawyer in town and a sheriff would be sitting in Alec Murdaugh's office when he would be told to go get stacks of cash from the bank and bring them back to Alec Murdaugh in his office while he was meeting with some of these people.
I mean, who does that stuff?
It's wild. It's low country South Carolina, right? So, it's definitely different than Tampa Bay, Florida. There's no doubt about that. And it just seems like there was such a long time that there was a different justice system for Alec Murdaugh. And
let me ask you a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Why then, if here's a family that's all about the family, right? So great-grandfather, grandfather, dad, and Alec, and now Alec obviously protecting the son in the Smith case, Alec protecting, I think, the other son in the boating accident case, Paul. What then what was the motive in the criminal case that the state attorneys put out there? Why then, end the lives of your wife and your son? This is your progeny. Sounds like all he wants to do is protect his progeny.
That is exactly what you're saying is kind of why it was tough to get. Now, listen, the jury's convicted him. He's convicted. He's sentenced to life in prison, and it is what it is. And legally, he did this. That was why it was always hard for me to kind of get there, because the motive was to cover up the financial crimes. However, committing this act didn't cover up the financial crimes. It delayed it for like a month and didn't really change anything. Now, if we're going to get into some conspiracy theories, here is a lot of what I heard and what people have been sending me on Twitter that we haven't really talked about yet. The first is Maggie Murdaugh, Alec's wife, met with a divorce attorney, wanted to get a divorce, talked to her, the person that did her nails. Literally, that person was coming out and talking about how she said she wanted to get a divorce. Yet, not a single person at trial, including Maggie's sister and confidant, said that she was seeking a divorce, said that she wanted a divorce, said that she even mentioned that she wanted a divorce. Instead, they said it was a happy marriage. So that's the weird stuff. Is like, that would make sense. And I think a lot of people were telling themselves that because, as you can understand, that would be a good motive. She was going to divorce him, try to take his money, uncover all the stuff that he's been doing, put a black mark on the family name. That would be understandable as a motive, but that never came out in trial that she wanted to get a divorce.
Interesting. And speaking about the financial crimes, he's a lawyer, right? In a law firm. Don't they have obligations to do some sort of accounting and background, and what if you're one of the clients? At some point, if it were one of our clients and we hadn't given them their settlement money for a year, 2 years, you would think that they would complain to somebody.
I agree. It's wild to think about. And not all of them, a bunch of lawyers from his firm came and testified. We trusted Alec. He was a big producer. We always loved him. He was one of our best friends. Like, I don't care. I trust you. You're one of my good friends. Yeah. You're not going to steal money from our firm. That's what I tell people. It's like, my dad is a lawyer in this firm. He's not going to steal money from this firm. Right. Like, we all look at it. We all see how it happens. We all see the cases. Like, we may not work on every case, but we see the cases coming in. It was like to the tune of $12 million. I don't care how much money you make. You're going to notice $1 million a year. And by the way, they talked about how much money he made every year. He wasn't making $10 million a year where $1 million up or down wouldn't have made a difference. It was like $1 million, 500,000, 200,000, 800,000. He was making a lot of money, fine. But like, you would notice $1 million going missing in that firm if you're one of the lawyers. Right,
because you're talking about money that's equivalent to having an additional partner that doesn't exist.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Wow, that's wild. So the judge, again, poetic justice in my opinion, the judge that sentenced him, African-American judge, and apparently his upbringing was very humble. Is that right?
I don't know a ton about his upbringing. I know that his son passed away right before the trial. His 40-year-old son, so his adult son. So it was really difficult to deal with. This other lawyer sitting there who has now been proven to take the life of his adult son, and he's probably thinking, I would have done anything to protect my son and keep him alive, and I lost my son. So you can only imagine the emotions he was going through with that.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, and this may sound a little, crass, but if you would have had this case one generation back, this judge would not have been presiding in this case in Low Country, South Carolina, right?
Yeah, 100 years ago, when Murdaugh's gained control, it would have it would have looked very, very different. And I think that's kind of a testament to where we're going with the justice system, right? And I think that that's at least showing we're hopefully going in the right direction, because there are no longer two justice systems for the Murdaughs and everybody else in Low Country, South Carolina. Now, the prosecutors have done lots of interviews, and they act like there's now no longer two justice systems, period. I don't necessarily think I agree with that. I think there are two justice systems for the rich and famous and powerful, and we'll continue to see that. But hopefully we can pick it off one at a time to level the playing field in how it's supposed to be throughout our justice system.
Right. I mean, we've experienced this recently here in Florida. We just saw, somebody that, in my opinion, I thought could never be bought. They bought him. Hook, line, and sinker, they took him. Right?
Yep. It happens. I mean, it definitely still does happen. One of the other things that came up with this was there's this interview with a sex worker going around, and she is saying that she one night was part of a group of women that were purchased to service a party of Southern gentlemen, including Alec Murdaugh, and she was the lucky one picked to hang out with him that night, and that he was aggressive and I think physically abusive, and things that would lead now things that were in 100% contradiction to what everybody testified at trial, that he literally couldn't even put down his own dog. A prosecution witness testified to that he couldn't do it. He had to have somebody else put down, I think it was a dog or somebody that was sick. Okay. And yet this evidence of this sex worker never came in. She was never called as a witness. This testimony never happened at trial. Why do you think that is?
Well, that's character assassination. And I'm guessing that the reason they kept it out is because it's
not reliable.
Oh, why? Because she's a sex worker?
I mean, yeah, it's like, how do you prove that I'm not calling her a liar, right?
Right, I get
Reliability is different than saying somebody's a liar, right. Okay?
Reliability. Can you corroborate that?
Yes.
They can't corroborate that statement.
Correct. Is anybody else going to say you were with him that night?
Right.
Because if the answer is no, now you're giving the defense a lot to, it's for the same reason. Have you followed the Cousin Eddie thing at all?
No.
So he's the guy, the drug dealer side of the road, was apparently or supposedly allegedly paid to kill Alec Murdaugh for the insurance money. Well, he just had a court date because he's obviously in criminal trouble, selling drugs, insurance fraud, that scheme with Alec Murdaugh. He was threatened the entire trial that they were going to call him to testify. And the defense attorney basically said, make my day. I can't wait to cross-examine him. So what do you think about that? About certain witnesses that apparently have all this evidence and testimony that it's so bad for the defendant and they don't get called. Why?
I'll tell you why. And I'll use it from the perspective of the lady of the night, because her testimony is going to be, I was there with Alec Murdaugh and he is violent. Did anybody witness this? Yes. Who? The sheriff, the coroner, the prosecutor, and the judge in the other courtroom.
That's not a bad point. I mean, we've had cases where I'll just say, and in other states where many of those same positions were involved with our client, which is absolutely coming into play when we start talking about deals for our clients, right? I mean, illegal activity is not that they are not immune from illegal activity just because you're the sheriff or the prosecutor or a judge.
Let me ask you, I presume they're appealing the sentence and the conviction.
They're appealing the conviction, because a lot of other bad acts came in.
So, so they did have some sort of other prior bad acts that came in, because was that the focus of that trial?
All the financial crimes came in, and the side of the road incident came in. The financial crimes came in as motive. Literally, I want to say half the trial was focused on the financial crimes.
So, there's a good chance they might get this thing reversed, because if they had too much evidence that was not related to the taking of the son and the wife's lives, that I think could have had impact.
So I would say, when you say there's a good chance, when we're talking about appeals, it's all relevant, right? So as far as an appeal goes, it's a good chance. But just generally speaking, it's not like a more than 50% chance. It's like a 10% chance,
Yeah, if you're lucky at 10%, right? Right. Absolutely. But at least it's a viable theory for the appellate lawyers.
Correct. It's not just spilt milk. It's not just bitterness. They actually have some real arguments that they're going to be able to make on appeal. I don't think they're going to win. If I was a betting man, I would say they're not going to win the appeal, but they do have some legitimate arguments at least to make on appeal. But from the stand under oath, he basically admitted to committing all these financial crimes, to committing insurance fraud, to doing all of these other crimes. So it seems like regardless, he is going to get convicted of multiple crimes, and they have a something like, if you steal more than $10,000, I can't remember what the verbiage is they used. It's like strike 1, 2, and 3. If you get convicted of 3, you go to prison for life without parole, and he's got 100. So he's going to get life without parole either way, but obviously he does not want to have the conviction of his wife and son and their deaths on his record, obviously.
So you can actually have a life sentence for financial crimes in South Carolina?
Yes, I believe that's what all the reports are, and that's what the prosecutor said in one of their interviews.
Wow.
He has still not pled guilty to them, which I think is weird too, because he admitted everything under oath, but he also said in trial, Alec Murdaugh, because he took the stand, he said at trial that he tried to reach out to the AG's office to talk about that case, the financial case, and talk about this stuff, and they didn't want to talk to him about it. So I don't really know what's going on. They demanded speedy trial. There was all sorts of legal, I don't want to say shenanigans, but just like legal plays throughout this.
Gamesmanship.
Exactly, gamesmanship throughout the prosecution of this case.
Interesting. So the reality is he's probably setting this thing up because he knows what he's doing. At the end of the day, he's a lifelong lawyer. I don't know if he ever did any criminal defense work, but he did imagine some lights. He
prosecuted cases. So they have a volunteer assistant solicitor position that private lawyers can actually prosecute crimes. Okay. So he was one of those. So he prosecuted murderers. He prosecuted drug deal cases. That was one of the other theories, that maybe one of these drug cartels wanted to get him back because he was, doing drugs and buying drugs, maybe Cousin Eddie was skimming money, or because he put some of their members behind bars or whatever. So those are also some theory. Like literally,
interesting.
You couldn't make a movie about this case because nobody would believe it was real.
Right. I mean, I'll tell you, when I said it when we started, it's a soap opera. You hear this stuff, and like, this can't be 2022 is whenever this happened in the United States of America. This can't be realistically happening here.
It's crazy to think about. I mean, it's legitimately crazy to think about. And it starts off like Lifestyles of the Rich and the Famous with the beach house and their main house and the hunting lodge and thousands of acres. And his sons had these boats and they would drink all the time and they were above the law. And anytime there was a problem, Granddaddy, and everybody's got a nickname, Handsome and Big Red and Buster. And like literally everybody's got a nickname. And they would come and take care of it. The victims' families couldn't cross over the yellow tape. But when Handsome showed up, who was Grandpa, who was the solicitor, he'd walk right through and talk to everybody, tell them not to talk to anybody, and handle the whole situation and protect the Murdaughs. I mean, literally, this is the stories that make you think we are living 100 years ago.
Right. And then you ask yourself, this is South Carolina. Listen, I got nothing against South Carolina. I've been to South Carolina.
I like South Carolina.
Are the appellate judges chummy Are they to the point where they look at this case saying, hey, and I'm just making this up now, right? Just as an example. Y'all need to get this thing figured out, because the next thing that you're going to hear on the news is Alec Murdaugh have a press conference in the jail talking about, and this $1 million went to that judge, and this $300,000 went to that guy's, kid, or whatever the case may be. So I'm going to sink all you guys if I go down.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that, because he's so well connected and screwed over so many people that people had to be complacent in this, and people had to know, you would think. I thought you were going to go the other way and say, the appellate courts are going to let him win because they're still chummy with him. But honestly, he is a pariah at this point. Everybody has created distance between themselves and Alec Murdaugh. Nobody is taking his side. Some family members maybe, but from the legal community, I would think the appellate courts want to just sink his ship and lock him up to where he can never come out and say anything else again, because he is such a black mark on the legal community. I would think that, that's how they're going to look at it. I don't think they're going to give him any benefit of the doubt. I don't think they're going to look at this case and be like, was there too much 404B evidence? Was there too much character evidence? I think they're going to be like, no, they opened the door because of this question or that question, because to the defense attorney's credit, every time a bad fact would come in, they would try to flip it and use it as a good fact to prove, yes, he did that. He's admitting to that, which is proof that he didn't do this, because he would just admit to that too. So they tried to use it, which then, they opened the door, they went too far, or whatever it may be. He said, the judge said at one point, you can't walk through fire and expect not to get burned. So I think that that's one of the issues that we're dealing with in the case is, what does everybody think about Alec Murdaugh? And we know how much discretion judges and appellate courts have in making these decisions. So to just say nope and reject his appeal would not be any different than they do to thousands of criminal defendants every day.
Right. That's frankly the norm, I hate to say it, than the exception. I wonder if we're going to see any trickle down, because in my mind's eye, I'm thinking the Suns are going to have some real serious problems.
Well, there's only one left now. Buster.
Okay, there's only one left. So he's going to have some problems. And then I'm wondering if there are internal investigations that are not public yet, that whatever the South Carolina Law Enforcement Association is looking at the sheriff and the deputies and the coroner and the entire justice system in that county. And I wonder if there's going to be any fallout. So
again, and this is where it's like, are we really shining the light? Are we really looking under the magnifying glass? Or do we just want to have our scapegoat in Alec Murdaugh, who was the big fish, who did the most wrong? Can we just start getting on the right foot now? Because if they really want to shine a light, and they really want justice, and they really want everybody to pay that took part in this, they'll do exactly what you said. They will investigate the entire solicitor's office. They will investigate SLED. Why did this happen the way that it did? But instead, it seems like they put all that behind them. Bygones be bygones. They work together to sink Alec Murdaugh. And I don't see anybody else being really investigated besides, of course, Cousin Eddie or maybe Buster Murdaugh. But I don't see any other attorneys being investigated. Actually, that's not true. They did. The guy that ran the bank that he stole all the money and did all these, fraudulent loans, that guy's gotten convicted. And then there is the other attorney who was actually like the PR stealing money from people in wrongful death claims. Alec Murdaugh would appoint him the professional PR, and then they would steal the money. That guy's being prosecuted as well. But as far as solicitors, judges, law enforcement, I haven't heard anybody with Alec Murdaugh being investigated. And you would think, based on what you said, that if they really want justice and to clean it up down there, that they should investigate some of these people.
Because I'll tell you, if they don't investigate any of these people, if no other indictments come down for other crimes, I'm not saying, anything as severe as what we're talking about here, but if for other crimes, then that means they did set Murdaugh up and they wanted to get rid of the big fish because he had too much on them, and they put him in the closet or in the cell. They locked the door, throw away the key, and business as usual for everybody else that lives above the law.
Well, I don't really think they had to set him up, right? I mean, I think he absolutely admitted to doing a ton of crimes. Now, whether or not they reached or overreached in charging the murder when they did, maybe, but they convicted him of it, right? And I mean, I guess some people are saying maybe they, law enforcement did something. I don't think there was really any evidence they planted any evidence or things like that. They didn't have a lot of evidence, right? If they would have planted something, maybe it would have made it seem like he did it even more. But they didn't have to set him up because he did commit all these crimes. You're bringing up a good point in, have there been deals done behind closed doors protecting anybody else? That's kind of the question that I have at this point, because he couldn't have done all this by himself. We know he didn't because other people have been convicted, but really him, one other lawyer, and one guy at a bank were able to set up this scheme to steal $13 million and make all these criminal cases go away for 100 years. I would just think, and that's the other thing is like throughout the trial, all the other Murdaughs were painted as great people. But if you watch the documentaries or you hear other people talk about the grandfather or great-grandfather or Paul or whoever, it's a lot more condemnation than we heard through the trial, which obviously makes sense because it's a murder trial and you don't want to do that to the victims. It's a very weird, it does almost feel like The Notebook or something, set back.
Right, that's exactly right.
And it's like the old country back there, not just the low country, because I just couldn't imagine it happening to that level here. It's a weird thing to think about. But it's proof that this stuff does happen. Whether or not we know about it in our communities, this stuff happens.
Yeah. There's an old mob movie, and at some point, all the bosses are sitting in the room because they're about to get indicted. They're like, what about this guy? He's a good guy. Yeah, but why take a chance? And that's kind of what's going through my head, when we talk about this, because is it a matter of, yeah, he's going down. Why take a chance? Let's sink him. Let's put him away, and we just got to do what we got to do just a little bit more quietly now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting to follow, and people are going to have a lot of questions now that we've opened it up to what the heck is going on. What are people saying? What are people thinking about? We've got everybody that knows anything jumping in on this case. I don't think it would even be possible before people ask us on the podcast to do the Kohberger stuff because there is just so much going on with that, so much speculation, and it's so early in that case that the preliminary hearing hasn't even happened. The probable cause affidavit has all kind of holes on it, but we have a couple lined up. But we do want you to let us know what cases you'd be interested in and send us some stuff on Instagram and Twitter if you have YouTube videos or articles about, they said this person said that, and we can talk about it. And if it's legit, how it would affect the case. If it's not legit, how it wouldn't. What ways potentially it could come in if one side or the other opens the door. Until next time. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Tragos Law is our handle. And don't forget to listen to the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.